The channel, FTD Facts, did a video called The 10 Biggest Lies About the Catholic Church, in which they do a very good job at tackling the misconceptions, but in several places they overlooked some critical context. The host, Leroy Kenton, starts off stating, "Over the years, the Church has developed a reputation in positive aspects and also some negative aspects. Because of this, many misconceptions, stereotypes, and straight-up lies have spread about the Catholic Church." Well, there is a reason for many of those church misconceptions and stereotypes, and the Church is guilty of creating some of them and has itself straight-up lied about its institutional history, as I document in several videos, such as my Vatican Lies and Christian Myths and Fabrications series. I invite interested viewers to check them out for more historical background. So, let's look at some of these misconceptions and what is behind them. I won't be covering all 10, just the ones where more historical context is required. Let's start with number 9, regarding the concept of papal infallibility. FTD did not cover the origin of this relatively new declaration, which has only been around since 1870. Following the loss of the Papal States to the newly unified Italy, Pope Pius IX called the First Vatican Council in 1869. Compensating for the loss of temporal power, he and reactionary cardinals, known as zelanti, formulated the doctrine of infallibility and pressured many dissenting bishops to vote for it. Not only were many within the Church opposed to it, it generated significant displeasure in the secular world, even with Catholic monarchies such as Austria being uncomfortable with the doctrine. There are examples of infallibility that precede the official 1870 declaration, but that would make this video too long, as the history of infallibility is a topic on its own.
Catholics are anti-gay. That comes in at number 8. The Church does not hate any group of people. As a matter of fact,
The Catholic Church has love for all? Well, that's what they claim. Love the sinner, hate the sin. But the problem is claiming homosexuality is a disordered moral evil, as defined by Cardinal Ratzinger in 1986 when he was head of the Inquisition, but now known as the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. Further, as documented by journalist Frederick Martel in his book In the Closet of the Vatican, most of the Catholic hierarchy are homosexuals. Martel notes the hypocrisy of the institution and many of its senior clerics who publicly preach that homosexuality is a sin, but practice it privately, despite their vows of chastity.
from there, we look at number 7. Catholics can't read the Bible, or they're not allowed to. Well, Catholics are actually encouraged to read and pray with the Bible.
Sure, now the Church encourages it, but there was fierce opposition to Bibles in native languages. Thomas More had people executed for owning an English Bible, and Jan Hus and Martin Luther were both seminal in translating the Bible into and cementing the Bohemian and German languages, as they witnessed the obscurantist and dodgy tactics of the Church to bamboozle and mislead the Catholic faithful. Further, in his encyclicals and the Oath Against Modernism, issued by Pius X in 1910 and rescinded in 1967, the Pope took aim at new biblical textual criticisms, undermining Church teachings, and insisted on keeping medieval scholasticism and towing the party line. There was a loosening of Pius X's restrictions a few decades later in the 1943 encyclical Divino Afflante Spiritu, or Inspired by the Divine Spirit, where Pope Pius XII wrote that we must consider without neglecting any light derived from recent research. Also, the notorious Index of Prohibited Books was only abolished in 1966 following Vatican II, so the Church has a very bad record when it comes to reading and study of the Bible, and only in the last few decades has this attitude changed.
The next slide we're going to look at is only Catholics can go to heaven. Yes, Catholics are accused of believing that only people who follow their religion will go to heaven. Although Catholics do believe that their religion is the one true religion, they do recognize that God can use any means that he wants to bring somebody to the knowledge of himself, including means through other religions.
Well, this is both true and false only since Vatican II. As shown in other videos, such as the Papal Rants Against Modernism, The Vatican has repeatedly stated its position that only through the Church is salvation possible, and the Catechism of the Catholic Church states, outside the Church there is no salvation. Vatican II produced 2 declarations related to this topic, Dignitatis Humanae, or on religious freedom, and Nostra Aetate, on relations with other religions. So this topic is nuanced. The Catechism states only through the Church is salvation possible, but in this case it can be argued that the greater community of Christians is the Church, not the Vatican itself. And the Declaration of Religious Freedom is a reversal of the previous obstinate attitudes to modernism displayed in the 19th and 20th centuries by the popes, and was the start of the Church admitting there are alternate paths to salvation. Number 5. Catholicism is anti-woman. FTD covered the issue of no female priests, but this topic goes much deeper than just that narrow focus. The Church has been traditionally anti-women, as is demonstrated in the encyclicals on contraception and family planning Casti Connubii in 1930 and Humanae Vitae in 1968. FTD's deconstruction also ignores the verses in the Bible used to silence women, taken from a book that is a forgery written in Paul's name, but counter to what Paul actually taught about women and their role in the Church. The Vatican has also used its UN standing to inhibit family planning initiatives, such as it did at the 1994 Cairo Population Control Conference, to stifle the agenda of improving the socio-economic standing of women, and the Vatican used its power at the World Health Organization to block overpopulation policies. Further, the Church's false narratives around condom usage and AIDS prevalence and conditions the Church puts on receiving aid and condom policies are additional examples of the Church's anti-woman history. Number 2. Married priests. FTD went over the variations across differing Christian denominations, but they do not cover the history behind this particular evolution of Christian doctrine. A celibate priesthood has only been an official policy for the last half of Christianity, as during the first half there were many married popes and clergy. It wasn't until after 1074, with the reforms started by Pope Gregory VII, that celibacy started to be enforced for the first time after he published an encyclical against married priests. Then, only following the Second Lateran Council in 1139, was priestly marriage prohibited, and the celibate lifestyle became officially enshrined within the ranks of the Church. Number 1. Priests as predators. This topic has been done to death, and there is a lot of conflation going on, particularly by the Vatican hierarchy, who have fallaciously equated homosexuality with pedophilia. Granted, not all priests are predators, but the stats around the psychosexual health of the priesthood in general is not good. The movie Spotlight did a good job exposing how high the number of offenders were in Boston, based on the research of Richard Sipe, who in his own book notes that only 8%, stop and think about that, only 8% of priests are psychosexually mature. There are countless examples that this behavior is not new, that it can be traced back virtually to the start of Christianity, with canons from the Council of Elvira, circa 306, against sexual abuse. Further, a list of rules, known as the penitentials, emerged from the monastic communities, where sex was so widespread that the rules and the consequences for breaking them had to be codified. Sipe and Martel's research indicate a lot of sexual activity is knowingly going on inside the Church, but the majority of it is between consenting adults. Still, the number of predators is way too high. If you like my content, please like and subscribe to get notified of new videos. Please also consider supporting my work by becoming a Patreon sponsor. You can also find me on the following platforms: